The difficulty of surviving inside the nightmare town has just reached an entirely new level. The remaining survivors are now facing a brand new type of creature. Monsters capable of completely ignoring the protective talismans and smashing directly through walls. At this point, it almost feels like the town is trying to wipe everyone out for good. Fortunately, the genius-level eccentric Jade has finally uncovered a crucial clue, and he seems only one final step away from solving everything. But at the same time, that discovery has pushed him into an even greater danger. Welcome back to the latest episode recap of From. The story picks up directly where the previous episode ended. Young Ethan follows the others to the edge of a massive lake. Unfortunately, the water appears completely ordinary, meaning this probably is not the mysterious Lake of Tears he has been searching for. However, while gathering vegetables nearby, several residents suddenly discover something hidden beneath the surface of the water. Working together, everyone begins pulling the objects toward shore using a rope. After tearing away the thick layers of lakeweed, they are horrified to uncover 3 human-shaped dolls crudely sewn together from burlap sacks. The strange expressions on the dolls instantly send chills through the entire group. Donna suddenly seems to realize something and quickly grabs a pair of scissors, slicing open one of the dolls' chests. Inside, she discovers nothing but strips of cloth and dried straw. Her face immediately turns pale. Normally, people create dolls like these as scarecrows to frighten birds away from crops. But now these things have been deliberately sunk beneath the lake, almost as though someone was trying to suppress or imprison something hidden underwater. The group exchanges uneasy glances, every person suddenly feeling an icy chill crawl down their spine. Donna immediately takes control of the situation and orders everyone to stuff the dolls full of heavy stones and sink them back to the bottom of the lake as quickly as possible. If something terrifying really is trapped beneath the water, letting it escape could doom all of them completely. But at that exact moment, fragmented memories suddenly begin flashing through Tabitha's mind. Noticing her strange reaction, Donna quickly pulls her aside to ask what is wrong. Shaken, Tabitha explains that the dolls feel strangely familiar, as though she has seen them somewhere before. Yet no matter how hard she tries, her memories remain frustratingly incomplete. Meanwhile, the others finish filling the dolls with stones and work together to throw all 3 back into the lake. Even then, Ellis still does not feel safe. He grabs a long wooden pole and forcefully pushes the dolls deeper beneath the surface until they finally disappear completely underwater. Only then does he let out a relieved breath. But Tabitha continues staring at the lake, clearly still struggling to remember something important. With darkness rapidly approaching, Donna reluctantly builds a fire outside the abandoned wooden cabin near the shore. There is no longer enough time to return to town before nightfall, meaning the group has no choice but to spend the night beside the lake. Before long, darkness fully descends. Inside the cabin, nobody can sleep. Although a protective talisman hangs beside the doorway, the terrifying image of the straw dolls continues haunting everyone's thoughts. And then suddenly, a strange, singing voice drifts across the lake through the night air. The song instantly unlocks a deeply buried memory inside Tabitha's mind. When she was a child, she once owned dolls identical to these. Later, a mysterious man told her the dolls would bring terrible nightmares, so he threw them all into the lake. But after that man eventually died, the nightmares climbed back out of the water. Tabitha's face immediately turns ghostly pale. She desperately screams that everyone must leave right now. But before anyone can react, the cabin doors and windows suddenly begin shaking violently. A massive figure crashes directly through the entrance. At the same time, the dolls themselves appear to come alive, launching savage attacks against everyone inside the cabin. One man fails to dodge in time and has his jaw brutally pierced straight through by one of the dolls. Another woman flees alone into the tall grass outside, only to come face to face with another horrifying straw figure waiting for her in the darkness. Ellis charged forward with a wooden stick raised high above his head, desperately trying to fight back. But no matter how hard he struck, the attacks caused almost no real damage to the creatures. Donna prepared to cover Tabitha and Ethan while they escaped, only to suddenly realize another scarecrow had appeared directly behind her. At the critical moment, Tabitha finally remembered how to kill the monsters. Without hesitation, She yanked the wooden stake from one of the dolls and drove it violently into the scarecrow's back as though stabbing through soft tofu. The second scarecrow appeared to realize its weakness had been exposed. Instead of continuing the attack, it abruptly turned around and disappeared into the darkness at astonishing speed. Meanwhile, the eccentric genius Jade decided to take an extremely dangerous gamble in order to recover the missing memories hidden inside his mind. He directly swallowed a batch of hallucinogenic mushrooms. At first, the experiment seemed completely useless. But then Jade accidentally noticed a spider crawling across the glass nearby. And in that instant, he realized the hallucinations had probably already begun. To stay safe, Jade ordered Boyd to remain beside him at all times. The two even agreed on a special safe word, Capricorn. If Jade became completely trapped inside the hallucinations, Boyd would have to say that word and forcefully pull him back to reality. As time slowly passed, the effects of the mushrooms became stronger and stronger. Jade's eyes gradually lost focus while he continuously questioned himself, desperately trying to understand how anyone could possibly escape this cursed town. Then suddenly, the sound of violin echoed through the air. Jade looked up in shock and realized the person standing before him was none other than his own 12-year-old self. He immediately remembered that moment from his childhood. Back then, his grandmother had been dying. Terrified of losing her, young Jade spent an entire day playing her favorite violin piece over and over again. But no matter how hard he thought about it, he could not understand what this memory had to do with escaping the town. Just as Jade's emotions began spiraling out of control, another familiar figure suddenly appeared out of nowhere. It was the mysterious man Jade had previously seen nailed to a tree deep within the forest. The man slowly held out a skull overflowing with fresh blood, while repeatedly whispering the same words over and over again. Drink. Although Boyd could not see any of the horrifying visions surrounding Jade, he still encouraged him to drink whatever was inside the skull. After all, none of it was real anyway. Jade reluctantly agreed. Suppressing the overwhelming nausea, he forced himself to swallow the foul-smelling liquid in one gulp. And the moment he finished drinking, the mysterious man vanished instantly. Standing before him, once again, was his 12-year-old self. The child slowly warned him that memories are not things people can selectively choose to face. If Jade insisted on continuing deeper into the truth, he might uncover something truly horrifying. But by now, Jade no longer feared death. As long as there was even the slightest chance of finding a way out of the town, he was willing to keep going no matter what awaited him ahead. So without hesitation, he followed the boy deeper into the darkness. Before they even realized it, the two of them had already crossed through the dense forest. Jade looked up in surprise and discovered they had somehow arrived outside Colony House. But before he could feel relieved, his expression instantly froze. Bodies were scattered everywhere across the ground. And even the few people still barely alive sat there blankly staring into space, mechanically pulling violin strings over and over again. Only after moving closer did Jade finally realize the horrifying truth. Every single one of those people was him. Different versions of himself from different periods of time. And judging from the wounds covering the corpses, they had not been killed by monsters at all. They had been murdered by other humans. At that moment, young Jade finally revealed the cruel truth hidden behind the town's curse. Every single time Jade came close to uncovering the truth, every time he tried to share that truth with the town's residents, the terrified people around him would eventually descend into hysteria and personally kill him themselves. The curse surrounding this town was not simply a nightmare. It was an endless cycle, a tragedy doomed to repeat forever. And in every cycle, Jade was destined to become the sacrificial victim. But even worse than that, Tabitha's future fate would apparently become even more horrifying than his. Fear and despair instantly swallowed Jade whole. His voice trembling, he desperately asked how the cycle could possibly be broken. But the child did not answer. Instead, he silently turned and walked straight into Colony House. Jade hurried after him. Together with Boyd, he eventually descended into the basement, where they discovered a hidden door concealed behind piles of debris. After clearing away the junk blocking the entrance, the two men slowly pushed the door open. Behind it was an endless black tunnel descending deep underground. Boyd followed Jade for part of the journey, but before long, he suddenly seemed to remember something important. He quickly warned Jade not to continue any farther and even shouted their agreed-upon safe word. Capricorn. But Jade firmly believed the real answers were waiting ahead. So, gritting his teeth, he continued alone all the way to the end of the tunnel. What awaited him, there was a dark and oppressive stone chamber. At the center stood an enormous stone altar, while strange symbols completely covered the surrounding walls. Young Jade slowly explained that this was the place where the children had been sacrificed. Jade immediately demanded to know how the children could be saved. But before the boy could answer, several smiling humanoid monsters suddenly emerged from the darkness. Only then did Jade realize the horrifying truth. This place was not merely a sacrifice chamber. It was the true nest of the monsters themselves. Without any chance to resist, Jade was instantly surrounded by the creatures and forcibly dragged onto the massive stone altar at the center of the room. And just before the heavy stone lid slowly sealed shut above him, Jade suddenly saw the ghostly spirit of a child staring directly into his eyes. The next second, Jade violently jolted awake in a chair inside the sheriff's station. Boyd was still standing beside him the entire time, which meant that horrifying journey through the forest, the tunnel, and the sacrifice chamber had apparently taken place entirely inside Jade's mind. But this time, the confusion in his eyes had finally disappeared completely.
I have to go home.
Unfortunately, the rest of the town's residents were still trapped inside endless fear and despair. Back at the clinic, the two doctors were treating Sophia's injuries. Earlier, she had mysteriously fallen into an empty water reservoir and broken her left arm. Thankfully, Christie's medical skills were solid enough, and she quickly managed to reset the fracture. Meanwhile, Mari headed toward the ambulance to retrieve a medical brace. As she stepped outside the clinic, she briefly crossed paths with Julie and Randall, who had clearly returned empty-handed from whatever mission they had attempted. But Mari did not ask any questions and simply continued walking toward the ambulance. Then, the moment she opened the storage compartment door, something unexpected suddenly happened. Mari suddenly froze in terror. She discovered that her wrists had somehow been shackled by heavy iron chains once again. At the very same moment, a horrifying scream burst through the ambulance radio. Back inside the clinic, Christie waited for quite a while, but still did not see Mari return. Confused, she walked toward the ambulance, only to find Mari collapsed on the floor with a deathly pale expression. At the same time, Julie and Randall were arguing fiercely inside the clinic. Even after failing twice in a row, Julie still refused to give up trying. But Randall had never seen the hallucinations Julie kept describing. In his eyes, everything she experienced was simply the result of a complete mental breakdown. And every time Julie lost consciousness, her body convulsed violently, making Randall genuinely afraid something terrible might eventually happen to her. Their argument was overheard completely by Sophia. Then, when she turned and noticed Mari and Christie seemingly arguing as well, a strange and meaningful smile slowly appeared across her face. And in the very next second, Mari once again felt the icy sensation of chains tightening around her wrists. It became painfully obvious that she still had not escaped the psychological trauma from what happened inside the caves. Thankfully, with Christie continuously comforting her, Mari gradually managed to calm down. But she remained absolutely convinced that everything she experienced earlier had been real, especially the horrifying screams coming through the radio. She had heard them clearly. Among those voices, she was certain she even recognized the voice of Kenny's father. Mari slowly came to a terrifying conclusion. Even after the town's residents died, their souls did not truly leave this place. Instead, they remained trapped here forever, enduring endless suffering and torment. To her, the entire town resembled some ancient creature feeding endlessly upon despair itself. In every survivor living, there was nothing more than livestock being carefully raised inside its cage. Meanwhile, back at Colony House, Fatima continued obsessively carving those strange stone statues resembling guardian spirits. Deputy Sheriff Kenny eventually approached her to apologize for the cold attitude he had shown earlier. He admitted that fear had completely overwhelmed his judgment at the time. But at the same time, he could not help asking Fatima what it actually felt like after forming a connection with one of the monsters. Fatima remained silent for a long moment before finally answering. She confessed that the feeling was impossible to describe with words. There had been countless nights when she stood alone beside the window, waiting for the creatures to appear, while having absolutely no idea what would happen if one of them truly came for her. Downstairs, old Henry had already drunk himself completely unconscious. As he pounded away at the piano, he continuously cursed the mysterious man in the yellow suit. After all, his wife had died horribly because of that man. The drunken old man vented his rage and grief almost hysterically, as though only by doing so could he temporarily suppress the terror and hatred buried deep inside him. And through Henry's breakdown, everyone finally began to understand just how unimaginably horrifying Victor's childhood trauma truly was after witnessing everything with his own eyes. Fortunately, Deputy Kinney arrived before things spiraled even further out of control. He helped the drunken Henry back to his room. Then, after everyone else finally left, Victor slowly pulled out the drawings he had created as a child. And at last, he finally began revealing the complete truth about how the man in the yellow suit gradually dragged the entire town into darkness step by step. And that concludes everything from episode 5 of season 4 of From. This episode finally introduced some genuinely important plot progression. But honestly, it is probably still too early to get overly hopeful. The so-called road home Jade has now discovered could very easily turn out to be yet another trap created by the humanoid monsters. So far, the only truly successful victory the residents have ever achieved was probably the time Boyd managed to kill one of the humanoid creatures. And with that, today's recap comes to an end. Feel free to share your own theories and thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you all in the next episode recap.